sports after this.
Unstoppable you, fueling your vitality the whole day through. Embrace each challenge with renewed might. With Supermalt, your performance takes flight.
With 20 essential vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, one Supermalt multivitamin after breakfast every day keeps you going.
What is health? It's more than the absence of illness. It's a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. But let's delve deeper. Health is the heartbeat of life. It's the rhythm that keeps us moving forward. The pulse that echoes our vitality. It's a symphony of balance and harmony, resonating in every aspect of our existence. Health is a silent conductor, orchestrating the dance between the body and mind. It's the energy that propels us towards our dreams and aspirations. It is the foundation upon which we build our futures. So, what is health to you? Join me, Kofi Bartels, this and every Thursday for Health Thursday, 8 a.m. on the Morning Crossfire as we explore important issues affecting your health. Only on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info.
Your number one station for talk. Let's talk. Let's talk.
We're on the home stretch of our bridge version of Hard Facts. Nick Agule is still with us. Nick, because we have just about two to 3 minutes, let's talk about this electoral act that's still, being tinkered on by the Senate committee. Why do you think there's a loss of dilly-dallying?
The National Assembly is looking to be failing us. Because after the 2023 election, one would have expected that by now they would have given us a brand new electoral law, like a year ago, which would have then given INEC enough notice to put all the preparatory work in place so that INEC will now be in a position to announce a timetable for the election as mandated by the Electoral Act itself, which is to say they must provide that timetable 360 days to the next election, and that is going to be in February. So the National Assembly should just get on with this business. They are already late, and if this National Assembly...
The month is already over. If
this National Assembly allows this Electoral Act not to be passed before the constitutional deadline to issue electoral timetable, I, Nick Agule, will personally lead a movement in Nigeria to recall all the 109 senators of Nigeria, because we don't need them again. If they can't give us an electoral law, then what are they doing there? Look at the amount of time they spent talking about sexual harassment. That's the time they should have been doing an electoral law for us. Because let's just forget it. If we don't have free and fair elections in Nigeria, we should forget about governance. Because politicians, not only in Nigeria, politicians all over the world, they fear the citizens because of the ballot. And that is why they can't do anyhow. Because they know that the citizens will punish them at the ballot. The ballot is the only place where we have powers over the politicians. And once that power goes, we're sitting ducks.
Well, Nick, I'll hold you to it. I want to say thank you for coming on the show. That's all the time we have. We've got to go. At the top of the hour, 4 o'clock, Ireti Bakare-Yusuf will be here with Borderlines. There's a lot to talk about on the international scene. My name is Marianne Dukakun. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, MIMIEYO, or better still, just search for me. Nick, thank you so much for coming to the studio.
Thank you very much. And I've taken a tour of the whole studios here. There's a lot happening here.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Well done, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, Lagos. Millions of listeners trust us on Hard Fact.
Whether it's politics, social issues, controversies, and trending stories. You know we're credible and objective.
It's Hard Facts with Marian Okon on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Your voice builds the table.
In the news, the federal government has charged senior advocate Michael Zekome with forgery.
People whose houses have been demolished in Makoko, sleeping on the water now.
Before you demolish, give them provision where they will stay before your demolition.
You know when they want to do their housing for their cronies or whatever, they like the waterfront.
You're part of the conversation.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk. It's 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock.
The news update on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. My name is Israel Umo, and this is a news update. In the news this hour, the Senate Committee on Appropriations says it has fixed Tuesday, March 17, 2026, for the final consideration and passage of the 2026 budget. The proposed budget stands at 48.472 trillion naira. The committee says budget defense sessions at committee level will run from February the 2nd to February 13. This is part of efforts to meet the planned timeline for approval. A public hearing has also been scheduled for Monday, February 9, to allow wider participation. In another news, the Petroleum Products Retail Outlets Owners Association of Nigeria is attributing the increase in the pump price of petrol to rising global crude oil prices. The association's spokesman Joseph Obele says prices have shot up above $70 a barrel, driven by geopolitical tensions outside Nigeria's control. But Petrowan has some suggestions on how the government can ease the hardship caused by the rising petrol prices. Moving on, the National Commissioner, Nigeria Data Protection Commission, Dr. Vincent Olatunji, says Nigeria's data protection framework is boosting jobs, investment, and public trust. Speaking at a media training in Lagos, he said compliance with data protection rules has also improved across public and private institutions. Dr. Olatunji noted that Nigeria's role in global data governance is expanding, adding that the country is collaborating with more than 40 countries implementing data protection laws. And finally, in the news, Anambra State Governor Chukwuma Soludo has announced plans to renovate or completely rebuild the Onitsha main market as part of efforts to revive commercial activities in the state. He was speaking in Oka during a meeting with the market leaders following his closure of the market. Soludo told the traders that the government could no longer tolerate the forced Monday sit-at-home that resulted in the market's closure. And that's all on the news at this hour in your number one station for talk, news and sports. My name is Israel Umo.
Conversation.
We talk.
You talk.
Going on online everywhere is about medical negligence.
Everybody have a story to tell.
Suffering that medically, Nigeria should not happen.
Nigeria ranks least when it comes to living conditions.
They want us to be in darkness and say we have light.
Our culture and our religious tendencies tend to affect most of the things that we do.
Join the conversation. 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Let's talk.
The heartbeat of radio keeps pumping.
All the trending news and conversation.
In a country that lacks social ambition and prosperity, you will work so hard and still not make it.
After God Almighty, it's money in Nigeria. We don't have government.
Governors from other states in a normal setting, they won't even get one vote.
What of our president? Is he not running this country from our side?
But those who give us Nigeria never realize that we are not one.
A man whose job is to protect you and your children is putting the lives of your children on the line.
See, all this issue, education, whatever, everything, we shouldn't leave everything for government to do.
It's so annoying at times when you hear some callers.
Call your father, don't call the government because you like your oppressor.
It's all day and night
with 99.3
Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Welcome to the home of conversation.
Go to Abuja, London to Kigali,
The world is shifting fast. Elections are shaping destinies. Wars are redrawing borders. Economies are rising and falling. And global alliances are being tested like never before. But what does it all mean for you?
With a new administration and a new president in the White House trying to put an end to the war.
I didn't know the historical context, what the state of Israel means for them.
Join the fearless Ireti Bakare-Yusuf on Borderlines every Friday at 4 p.m. on Nigeria Info 99.3. As she dissects the biggest global events and their impact on world peace.
Those who are not familiar with Israel or the war itself would not know much about the group breaking the silence.
No spin, no propaganda, just deep insights and fearless conversations on the geopolitics shaping our world.
People who will call and start telling you about the Bible prophecy about America and everything. See, America is not in the Bible. There's some people who, yes, they share the ideology of, yes, we and these people, we are equal, but they can't speak up.
Borderlines on Nigeria Info every Friday at 4 p.m. The world is changing. Don't just watch, understand it. Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Join the conversation no matter where you are. Download our mobile app by searching Nigeria Info FM on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Also, get news updates in sports, entertainment, news, and current affairs right on the app. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
You hear it from us.
We tell you who,
when,
where,
and how it was said.
Lagos Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has commended past and present leaders in the state.
If you're planning to disturb the peace of Lagos State, please have a rethink, because police say they will not be your friend.
Kwankwaso urged the president to leave a legacy of free elections.
Only on 99.3.
Your station for talk.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
On the station that talks.
Every time killing. Will the president come to fight
Atiku rejects call to step down.
Who is the owner of APC?
EFCC has stated that former governor Yahaya Bello remains innocent.
The way and manner our environment has been configured to call for a great
historical evidence of this current
Yusuf.
Hello and welcome to Borderlines, the only show that takes you beyond borders. Today, as you all know, I'm often a pest to get the right guest. You all know it's a joke between us. Well, I've been a pest to this particular person who lives in Israel, Jerusalem to be precise. Let me tell you who he is and why I really, really desperately wanted to talk to him. He is first of all, he's a peace activist. He's an Israeli peace activist. His focus is on peace between Palestine and Israel, based on respect between both parties, right? But fundamentally, he's also one of the main negotiators that got us to this current peace process. Now, we're in Nigeria, and you're going to get to speak to none other than Dr. Gershon Baskin. Gershon, welcome.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
I'm okay. Always worried and always looking forward.
Let's start from where, like I said, I'm a pest to you, and I thank you for always sending me your articles. And, I feel like I'm stalking you digitally. But more importantly is that you are one of the peace negotiators. You are one of those who advise the Americans. I know we've only got like 30 minutes, even though I'd like to keep you for like an hour. Tell me, or tell us, how did we get to this point and the part that you played? Because I know you spoke to Hamas. You were sort of like the go-between.
Right. Well, I've been doing this work for almost 48 years. So I'm one of the people on the ground who's worked on both sides of this conflict, on the Israeli side and the Palestinian side. My style of work and my ideology has always been that we do this together. So everything that I have done over the last 48 years, I've done with a Palestinian partner. And it's teamwork, and it's creating what I call the joint stakeholders mediation team. In other words, I think that the best form of mediation and negotiations between warring parties can take place if you can find two people from the conflict zone itself and empower them to be problem solvers, because no one knows the conflict better than people who live it. No one knows the sensitivity of the personalities involved and the issues involved. All too often what we have almost in every case is a third-party mediator or negotiator who comes in who doesn't know the issue, doesn't know the conflict, doesn't know the people, sometimes can't even pronounce the names of the people involved, and doesn't know the history, doesn't carry all this inside of them and live it on a daily basis. So that's the kind of work that I've done. As a result of the nature of this conflict, I think in every conflict, a lot of the work has been involving in creating safe zones for secret direct back channels. Because the more that we can get enemies to talk to each other directly and not through third-party mediators, the faster we can come to solutions. If we can create this safe space where people know they can come and talk openly and not worry about seeing their names being quoted in the papers the next day, and we can facilitate that. Here we've also had a situation that I think is also common in a lot of conflict situations, probably in Nigeria as well, that there are parties that you're not allowed to talk to. In Israel, we're not allowed to talk to Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization. They're the enemy. It could even be considered treason in talking to them. And it's very rare when you find circumstances where someone from the other side of the conflict is willing to engage with people who are perceived as being the worst enemy. It's a personal risk at times. This is why when I've been doing it, I've been talking to Hamas for more than 18 years. I've always made sure that the officials on the Israeli side are aware about it, know who I'm talking to and what I'm talking about. And for that reason, I think for 18 years, I haven't been arrested doing this work, and I've been able to help negotiate a couple of ceasefires. I helped to negotiate the release of the Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit back in 2011, which was he was in captivity for 5 years and 4 months. And I helped during this conflict over the last two years and 3 months, several times trying to negotiate between Israel and the Hamas side, coming to the conclusion after the election of Donald Trump that there was no need to talk to the Israeli official side anymore because the Israelis only wanted to continue the war. And the challenge became arriving at a situation where the Americans would understand that they have the power, the ability to end the war should they decide to do that. And that eventually happened. Of course, it took an Israeli attack on Doha, an attempted attack to assassinate the Hamas leadership for the Americans to get to the understanding, mainly through the help of the Arab nations in the Gulf, to tell the Americans that Israel is unhinged, this government is crazy, and it's danger to the security of the entire region. And at that point, President Trump made the decision to end the war. And of course, once he made that decision, he imposed it on Israel, and Israel could not say no.
It's curious because given all the work you've put in, and I know you worked with Steve Witkoff quite a bit, you actually exchange WhatsApp messages with him, which, is a pretty big deal. I know you don't make a lot of fuss about it, but it is a pretty big deal because, again, you were advising him because you understand, not only do you understand the region, you understand Hamas and, their mindset and what their intentions and objectives are. How did you feel then when Israel bombed Hamas, or at least attempted to bomb Hamas in Qatar, given all the work that you and your partner had invested?
What had preceded the Israeli bombing in Doha was the negotiations of a document that I wrote together with the Hamas leader in consultation with Witkoff on a daily basis. This document was going back and forth between me and Hamas and sharing it with Witkoff and getting his feedback. And we had a document that went to the Hamas leadership through the Qatari negotiating team. The Qataris were actually the ones who presented it officially. There was some confusion because there were two documents floating around, and the Qataris showed Hamas originally one document, which they did not like, and they asked about the document that I worked on, and it was presented to them as American ideas. But this got very confusing for Hamas, and actually the night before the Israeli attack, it was September 8th, I got a phone call from Washington, from Witkoff, saying that the Hamas is receiving a final document from the Qatari side. And I was told by Witkoff, you better tell Hamas that they can't say no. They have to say yes to this document. This is the last and final document. The next day in the afternoon, Israel tried to kill them all. My first initial thought was I set up? I actually enable the Israelis to know that Hamas was sitting in the same room discussing a document that they just received from the Qataris, which originated in Washington. And it was very confusing, and I didn't know exactly where to put myself in this picture because I couldn't reach any of the Hamas leaders at that point. And the talk in Israel immediately after the attack was that it was successful and that Israel killed all the Hamas leadership or most of the Hamas leadership. Thus was the talk in the Israeli media for hours. Later in the evening, there began to be question marks. The next day, around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I got a series of WhatsApp from one of the Hamas leaders telling me that none of them were killed. They were all safe, that the Qataris told them to shut their phones and to not leave their premises, and I wouldn't hear from them. About 5 days later, one of the Hamas leaders contacted me, very angry, because he also thought that maybe I set them up and he was part of it. He yelled at me and said, you told us to trust the Americans, because I did. For months, I was telling them that they need to imagine that they're sitting in a room with Donald Trump, not with the Israelis. Because every time I presented an idea, the response was, Israel will never agree to that. And I kept telling them after Trump was elected, you need to forget about the Israeli side. The only person you need to convince is Trump. If Trump believes that you're serious about releasing all the hostages and ending the war, you will get Trump to impose a peace deal or an end of war deal on the Israelis. So the initial response was that I set them up, that I lied to them about the Americans helping him, because they said Israel couldn't have done this without the green light from Washington. I relayed this to Washington and got responses back. We didn't have anything to do with it. Tell the Hamas that we didn't okay it. We condemn it. I was told to instruct the Hamas to look at Trump's Truth Social, because there would be a posting in which he condemns Israel and says that the United States had nothing to do with it. And of course, this is the man that we know with Donald Trump takes an imaginary situation and creates reality by posting it on Truth Social. Once it's on Truth Social, it's real. This is the real Donald Trump is put out there. And that's exactly what happened. About 10 days later, I got a phone call from Washington with the following words, very short message: we have a plan. And that was it. And the next day, the Truth Social published what was then Trump's 21 points. It became 20 points. I was told to tell Hamas once again to look at it and to know that they can't say no. At that point, Netanyahu was the final days of Heads of State Week at the General Assembly in New York. Netanyahu was one of the last speakers to the General Assembly. He spoke to an empty General Assembly because almost every country of the world walked out on him. And when he was finished, he was ordered to come to Washington. He sat in the Oval Office next to Donald Trump with cameras on and a representative of the Qatari Prime Minister in the room. Trump gave Netanyahu the telephone and instructed him to call the Qatari Prime Minister. He scripted the whole thing. He gave Netanyahu the words that he wanted him to say, and Netanyahu, humiliated on television, on camera, apologized to the Qatari Prime Minister. And when that phone call was over, and all the journalists left the room, Trump turned to Netanyahu and said, Bibi, as he calls him, Bibi, the war is over. You're going to leave this room and you're going to announce to the world that the war is over. We're going to bring you home all the hostages. They're all going to come home. But you're going to say you support Trump's 21-point plan, 20-point plan. And that's what happened. And Trump put out, Israel said yes to my plan. Washington told me then to talk to Hamas. I'm sure that Washington at that point was also talking to the Qataris and the Egyptians, and the Turks were brought in at this point to negotiate. And my instructions were to tell Hamas that they can't say no. Well, 2 or 3 days went by, and Hamas actually gave their official answer, and it was yes, but. Well, Trump published on Truth Social, Hamas said yes. He removed the but, and that became reality. I advised Washington that at this point it would be good to move the talks from Qatar to Egypt, because the Qataris are very good at the big picture, and the Egyptians are very good at details. We needed to get into details. And then the Sharm el-Sheikh meeting was scheduled. The Turks were brought in because the Turks have a lot of leverage on Hamas. And negotiations took place. And at those Sharm el-Sheikh talks in Egypt, two remarkable things happened that were unprecedented.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So please go into it. Sharm el-Sheikh, I was there.
On the last night of the Sharm el-Sheikh negotiations, Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, his emissary, knocked on the door of Dr. Khalil Chaya, the head of the Hamas delegation, and had a human exchange because Israel had killed one of Chaya's sons in the attack in Doha, and Steve Witkoff lost a son to drug overdose. And Witkoff turned to, this was published all over, he turned to Chaya and said, as a bereaved father to a bereaved father, I want to talk to you. And said, we need to think about our children. We need to think about the next generation. And that human moment of Witkoff with Kushner talking to Chaya, it brought Hamas to say yes to the end of the war plan. And at 2:00 in the morning, another unprecedented event happened. The Qatari, the Egyptian, and the Turkish mediators entered the room together with an Israeli delegation of officials sitting on one side of the room and a Hamas delegation sitting on the other side of the room. And the first time an Israeli delegation and a Hamas delegation were in the same room, and they all signed the agreement that evening, which led later to the famous ceremony that President Trump held in Sharm el-Sheikh with the heads of states and with the mediators signing this negotiated agreement, which is 3 months old. And while the war did officially end 3 months ago, there have been breaches of the agreement every single day by Israel. And much fewer breaches by Hamas, but breaches by Hamas as well. And the consequences have been that about 450 Gazans have been killed since the beginning of the end of the war. And a majority of them were not Hamas fighters. They were civilians, men, women, children. But the situation is now on the cusp of a new era because we're entering what's called phase 2. Now,
thank you. Excuse me. And, it's funny what you say about Sharm el-Sheikh because, like I said, I was in Sharm el-Sheikh and security was tight. And now I understand because one of the things, for all the, they don't take we African journalists seriously, which was annoying. But one of the things here is that we had, we kept wondering why Israel wasn't there, why Hamas wasn't there. Egypt was signing, everybody was signing, but the two sides, that were at war were not there. But now we understand.
They weren't at the ceremony, but they were in the negotiation.
Yes, exactly. Now we understand what happened. Now, so here we are today. Last week, Trump publicized, or at least did a massive, yet another razzmatazz for his peace board. Two things that I'd like you to talk to. The fact that in all of this, the West Bank doesn't come up, but yet there's a heck of a lot of violence going on in the West Bank. Israel is breaking a lot of laws in the West Bank. Nobody's talking about that. And also the fact that now we have this peace board, which is perhaps, if I may say, one of the most bizarre things that we have seen since President Trump came into power.
So the West Bank, I believe, will be addressed in the coming months. American attention was on Gaza. And once the pieces begin to fall into place in Gaza and the peace board has been established, there are still more countries that need to answer to the invitation. 60 countries were invited. A lot of them have not responded yet. I think we'll see more agreements of additional countries to join the peace board. What's perhaps more important in terms of daily life here is that under the peace board, there's now an executive committee that has been established with Kushner and Witkoff and other people they work with. They hired a very talented and knowledgeable Bulgarian politician who worked for the UN, a Secretary General during the time of Ban Ki-moon, and he's negotiated in the past ceasefire agreements between Israel and Hamas. He's very knowledgeable. What's missing on the executive committee is Palestinian agency. there's no Palestinian representation on the executive committee, and there must be. And this is a point that myself and my Palestinian colleague Samer Sinjalawi and I have been making every day to Witkoff and to Kushner and to the other people working with them. There has to be Palestinian agency at the level of the executive committee. And the board, the Palestinian governing board, what's called the National Committee for Gaza, has been appointed and vetted and approved by all the different parties, including the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, the Arab nations, Israel, Egypt, and Jordan, and the Emirates, and the Saudis, and everyone that's going to need to work with them in order to begin the process of rebuilding Gaza. The Americans were just here, Witkoff and Kushner were just here in Jerusalem, telling Netanyahu that the Rafah crossing is going to be opening. Netanyahu is trying to prevent it from being open. It's going to be opening. This is the main lifeline for Gaza. Initially, it'll be a crossing for people in two directions, but eventually it has to become the main commercial crossing point as well. As much as possible, what needs to happen is Israel needs to be removed from the question of who and what goes into Gaza and who and what leaves Gaza. This needs to be a Palestinian issue. And as you said, the whole thing needs to be connected in a political process of bringing the two-state solution back to the table. Because without a political framework that's going to grant the Palestinians freedom, this is just another chapter in the conflict. It comes down to the following equation, which is pretty simple to understand. Israel will never have security if the Palestinians don't have freedom, and the Palestinians will never have freedom if Israel doesn't have security. That's the bottom line here. That's what we're talking about. And we're at a point where there's an understanding that both the state of Israel and the Palestinians, the state of Palestine, need new leadership. The leadership that runs both Israel and Palestine is the leadership of yesterday. And we need a younger, more dynamic leadership looking forward. We need to make sure that there are a lot more women on both sides in the leadership of Israel and of Palestine, because that's a qualitative difference to the leadership that's absent in the current reality. Even in the new Palestinian governing body for Gaza, there's one woman, only one woman. She also happens to be the only Christian in the Gaza Governing Committee, which is also wrong. Even though there's a very small population of Christians in Gaza, the Palestinian national movement has always been secular and has included Muslims and Christians working together. I think we need more women, we need more Christians. We in Israel certainly need a new government. This is a government of disaster, a government of shame, a government that has committed war crimes in Gaza. And we will go to elections this year, and the Palestinians, according to the promise of President Abbas, the promise that he made to Mohammed bin Salman and to Emmanuel Macron and to the United Nations General Assembly, the Palestinians will go to national elections within a year from the end of the war. So both sides are going to be going to elections, hopefully soon.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's a shame we're running out of time, because I read your last article on there and I wanted to kind of go into there. But because of time, because I'm being told we don't have much time left, although I've asked for a little bit more, I'd like to talk to you about justice, because somebody like you who is very optimistic that, look, the future can not just be bright, the future can include both parties. I know that is something that you don't just write about, something you believe. Even when I've messaged you back and said how, you're strong and you believe in it and you're determined about it. But how then can we expect this new board of peace to be successful, without anybody talking about justice? And by justice, I mean, we've got the United Nations, right? You've got international law. That's really, nobody has said to Israel. Israel is still refusing to accept that they've committed a genocide, despite pretty much every expert saying they've committed genocide. And the Palestinians feel that somehow all these glossy pictures by Jared Kushner, the fancy buildings, funky looking new Gaza for the youth, is basically glossing over their pain. So where does justice sit into this, and who is going to ensure that justice happens? And can we expect any kind of success without justice?
These are really, really good and difficult questions. The first thing, the Board of Peace is, as you said, a very strange body, because it seems that what Trump is trying to do is to replace the world order as we've known it, to replace the UN with a different body which doesn't function strictly under international law. We need to judge it by what it does and what its achievements are, and less by the words. The charter that the different countries were instructed to sign is very bad. I mean, it's certainly outside of the natural order of things that we've known in the world since the end of World War II. And this is dangerous. It is dangerous. But we also at the same time need to recognize that the UN has been a huge failure in its ability to end conflict, so to prevent conflict. It's not done that. And the structure of the UN...
A lot of talk shop and not a lot of action, yes.
And it's a distorted management of the world. The fact that there are 5 countries that have the veto power and can essentially make the United Nations Security Council, the body where conflict should be brought to, make it an irrelevant body. It is unable to function in the way that it could. Maybe Trump's idea will be more useful of ending conflicts. We need to see and judge it by itself. On the issue of justice, I think that very difficult to look at. What is justice? Because every side in a conflict has its own definition of justice. I think in the long term, we need to hope that people feel that they have been justly addressed, that their conflict has been addressed in a way that gives them dignity, both on the human level and at the collective level. In the short term, what we're going to need to judge, and I wrote this in a piece that'll be published in the next days, is that for the Palestinians in Gaza, they're going to judge this process on whether or not today is better than yesterday. Am I going to have a roof above my house? Am I going to have electricity in my house? Am I going to have food for my children on the table?
But am I going to have freedom? Because ultimately, all of that comes with freedom.
Ultimately, they need freedom as well. But if you talk to a Palestinian in Gaza today about freedom or one state or 2 states or 3 states, what's your political solution? They're going to tell you, leave me alone. I want to know if I'm going to have a roof above my house head, and am I going to be able to put food on the table for my children? Palestinians, 2 million Palestinians in Gaza are in a survival mode right now. They're not in a political mode. They want to find their next meal. We've seen really bad weather over the last weeks, with 2 million people living in tents that have been blown away and people sitting in floods where their tents were put up because their homes were destroyed. 80 to 90% of the buildings in Gaza were destroyed by Israel during this war. And while many Palestinians in Gaza would leave if they could, and the doors will soon be open, the problem is that no one wants to take them. Some Palestinians in Gaza who want to leave to find a better place don't have any place to go. And many Palestinians feel that they should not leave. They have to stay in their land that belongs to them, that they own, that they identify with, that they've been in struggle with for 100 years for freedom and independence. So I think that we need to keep justice in front of us as a headline. It needs to be the sun that shines on us. And we need to judge this process much more slowly on whether or not people are going to be able to achieve their basic daily needs for survival with dignity. Eventually, Gaza will be rebuilt, and I don't know if it'll be the flashy pictures that Jared Kushner showed in Davos, but one thing to think about is that Gaza, 80% of Gaza was refugee camps. When Gaza will be rebuilt, they're not going to rebuild refugee camps. The aim is to build good quality housing and public buildings and schools and infrastructure. You know, for years, Palestinians haven't had electricity 24/7.
Yeah.
They need to have electricity 24/7. And in the reconstruction plans, infrastructure is the first thing that'll be dealt with. So I think that at the end of the day, we're going to judge on whether or not the lives of Palestinians are sharply improved in the coming period as a result of this process that's being led by Donald Trump and the Peace Board.
Thank you so much. I believe I've run out of time. Is that correct? Well, look, Gershon, I need to have you back. Like I said, I told you it wouldn't seem long enough. It won't seem long at all. We have so much to discuss because indeed we're talking about gentrification now. And as somebody who knows what gentrification does to the indigents, I think the whole world is extremely worried about.
Except that here we're talking about an entire population, not a select group of poor people who are being forced out of their homes to enable rich people to live in. All of Gaza needs to be rebuilt for the 2.2
But those buildings, though, look more for the rich than for
The big
Palestinians.
question is, how are Palestinians going to be able to afford what's being built for them? Part of it is that rebuilding the Palestinian economy. This is very important because for the 18 years of Hamas rule, Palestinians couldn't leave Gaza, and you had 68% youth unemployment. And this is a big question. Are there going to be jobs, worthy jobs for people? There are a lot of intelligent, educated people in Gaza. There were 7 universities working in Gaza before the war that none of them exist today. They were all destroyed. But many people graduated with degrees in engineering and computing and mathematics and science. And these people need to have jobs.
Indeed, one of the most educated population in the world.
For sure. So I think we have to be hopeful, and we have to insist that this reconstruction not be the classical gentrification of buildings for rich people when the local people can't afford to live there. Gaza has to be built for the Gazans, by the Gazans.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gershon Baskin, joining us all the way from Jerusalem. Thank you. And I'm going to bother you again because I need you back, Gershon.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
They give joy. Creamy taste plus vitamins where they walk.
It get vitamin A, B6, B1D, with protein and calcium for the whole family.
I carry and go school, now my yoga PDs.
Open up, drink up, feel up. Nutrio, my yogurt, irresistible. Nutrio drinking yogurt na correct product from Seaway. It get 2 type where you fit enjoy, sweetened and strawberry. It there for 500 ml, 400 ml, and 125 ml. Nutrio, my yogurt, irresistible.
And beyond borders.
Beyond borders.
It's Borderline
with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf.
So my husband's boss, Chief Odogu, came visiting, and I made ofe salad with Mr. Chef beef, all-purpose, and crayfish cubes, plus my 2-finger crush. Odogu, who doesn't eat out, even carried takeaway. Now you do this one, oh, Mr. Chef.
Savor the taste of culture with a 2-finger crush of Mr. Chef seasoning cubes. Available in chicken, beef, and all-purpose seasoning cubes. Mr. Chef, taste home, taste culture.
Chef of life.
AfriMillions 1 billion naira jackpot up for grabs every single week. There are lots of other amazing prizes. The first draw is Saturday, 31st January at 8 p.m. on Wazobia TV. So hurry and get them soon. Visit AfriMillions.ng to play now. Create your account and come pick your 6 lucky numbers from 1 to 49. Each ticket costs just 1,000 naira. AfriMillions, we win together. Players must be 18 plus. Licensed by the Lagos State Lottery and Gaming Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
Win from over 80 million naira in cash and exciting prizes in the Golden Hunt promo.
This promo, there's no need for advert anymore.
Because
my mom alone can hunt down any gist. How much more 80 million naira in prizes with the whole family involved?
Naija, let the Golden Hunt begin. Just buy any Golden Morn Golden Hunt 30 gram or 45 gram promo pack. Look inside for a unique code and dial *8011*1# for a chance to win big. Promo ends April 15, 2026. Golden Morn. Make every day golden.
Everybody confirm I'm the correct remedy for headache. Medic 55 now.
My name na Odunlade Adekola, and I be better hustler. From morning till night, na back to back. Work, traffic, noise. Sometimes it be like say your head go burst. Once that headache show, I go straight for Medic 55. With Medic 55, I did medic my headache. For headache,
use Medic 55.
If your body no tranga after 3 days, go see your doctor.
Above and beyond borders.
Beyond borders.
It's Borderline
with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. Be part of the discussion. It's Borderline.
On 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Killing. Will the president come to fight it? Where are the police and everything? Now you're talking about state police.
Atiku rejects call to step down.
Who is the owner of ATC?
EFCC has stated that former governor Yahaya Bello remains innocent.
The way and manner our environment has been configured to cause for a great concern.
Historical evidence of this current administration. There's a trust issue.
What Riley Moore said was that America will not stand.
Do you like what Trump is doing? He's just like God raising for this.
I want to thank you guys, Nigeria Info, at least for allowing us to speak and letting us know what is going on in the country.
All conversation, all day.
On 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Let's talk. Stay fixed on the station that talks.
Every time killing. Will the president come to fight it?
Welcome back to Borderlines, the only show that takes you beyond borders. So you had that conversation with Dr. Gershon Baskin, who he is one of the negotiators, or he was the sort of go-between between Hamas and the Americans, and he was able to give us some insiders. Well, my next guest is going to be educating us and indeed talking to us from the legal perspective, because international law appears to have been the one thing that's either been discarded, ignored, or forgotten in all of this. And I'm going to be asking him directly to start off with, who is responsible for that? So let me introduce him. Professor Saul Takahashi, I think I pronounced it well, is a leading scholar on international law, justice, and post-conflict governance. He's a visiting professor of legal studies at New York University, Abu Dhabi, where he served as the deputy head of the office he also served as the deputy head of office for the UN Commission for Human Rights in occupied Palestine from 2009 to 2014. Professor Takahashi, welcome to Borderlines.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, you heard in my intro, I said the first thing I'm going to throw you, we're going to be direct, because we are direct on Borderlines. International law, ignored, disrespected, discarded, but whatever way you want to sort of bracket it. Who can we hold responsible for that?
Well, first and foremost, we have to hold the Israelis responsible. They're the ones who have been committing genocide for over 2 years, and have even before 7th of October 2023. They're the ones who have been violating international law left and right every single day. Every single internationally recognized human right has been violated by Israel in Palestine and elsewhere as well. But we're talking about Palestine, so in particular in Palestine, for decades. So first and foremost, we have to hold the Israelis responsible. Then we have to look at, in a more broader sense. Obviously, Israel would not have been able to commit these atrocities and continue on with its impunity if it were not for the political and military and financial support, not just of the United States. I mean, the United States goes without saying. The United States is the real partner in crime. But also, the vast majority of Western countries have been supportive of Israel. They've occasionally issued very sort of limp statements, but they haven't done anything to make Israel, to hold Israel responsible for these violations. So, obviously Israel, obviously the United States, but frankly, the vast majority of the countries of the West are equally to blame for where we are now. We are really in the time of monsters, like Gramsci said.
Indeed.
The old world order is basically falling apart in front of our eyes. The new world order has not yet emerged, and here we are.
And here's the thing, though. For all of this, I've I've found myself in conversations, not necessarily on this show, private conversations with lawyers, with legal experts, one of whom is very close to me, who has said to me, look, you keep going on about international law. Who owns international law? Who is supposed to actually custody international law? And even who is supposed to implement it, and carry it out? We see a weaker and weaker UN. And could that be why international law has become so weak these days?
Well, the UN has definitely got weaker and weaker as the stronger countries continue to ignore it. But unfortunately, the way that the UN is structured, there really is no serious enforcement mechanism except for the Security Council. The Security Council is the only body in the UN that really has any teeth, that can enforce international law, that can order states to do things and order the use of military force to ensure compliance with international law. The Security Council are the ones. And of course, by design, the 5 permanent members that wield veto rights in the Security Council, they have the prerogative or the ability to hold them and their friends and their interests above the law. That's really what we're seeing. The system, that's how the system was designed, unfortunately. And so this is nothing really new. But what is new is, really first, what is new is just this brazen, obviously what is new, first of all, is the Israeli genocide or the overt genocide, which has been taking place since 2023. But even before that, we're looking at Ukraine and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, clear violation of international law. And, all the Western countries jumping up and down and screaming, this is the litmus test. This is the only litmus test for international law. You're with us or against us. And then, in the space of a year and a half or so, all of a sudden, international law, international norms, the conduct to be expected of any kind of UN member state, it's completely out of the window. Israel completely flouts violates international law, committing atrocity after atrocity every day. And these same countries, mainly I'm looking at the West, these same countries that were screaming international law and human rights, until that very day, all of a sudden now, they're looking at each other silently and sort of, wink, wink and nudge, nudge. So, that's really, I think it's what's new is this in your face, blatant double standards, this hypocrisy. The hypocrisy has always been there. The lack of enforcement has always been there, and the West has always got away with the lot. But because it's so extreme now with the live stream genocide that we have all been watching on our phones for 2.5 years or over 2 years, because it's so in your face, that's what's really causing this breaking point, I think.
Thank you. Here's the thing. Again, I'm going to be throwing this at you because somebody does need to speak for international law. But indeed, those who do tend to get punished by America. We have the case of Karim Khan, we have Francesca Albanese, and you have all these things. And here we are in this particular moment where we've been told there is a ceasefire that's been violated by Israel with almost 500 Palestinians or Gazans being killed up until this very morning, right? So, again, how do we protect? Why should we, especially those of us from the global south, continue to depend that there is a law that's supposed to apply to all of us? Israel isn't signed onto it. There is a warrant for Netanyahu. America isn't signed onto it. The United Kingdom isn't signed on. What is all of this? And then, of course, when we mention the United Kingdom, we have to then look at Keir Starmer, who was known to be a human rights lawyer and now seems to have forgotten what his original job was. Unpack that for us, please, Prof.
Look, I completely agree with you. How can the rest of the world look at the UN and look at international law in general and take this seriously. And I think I ask myself that every single day, of course, as I look myself in the mirror. But, I think it's important to it's important to understand that we shouldn't be throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Mm-hmm. What's happened, and I'm not defending anything and everything of international law of the UN or of the UN. The UN has had great failings, and like I mentioned before, the way the Security Council is designed is to protect the interests of the 5 winning states, the 5 states on the winning side in World War II. So there are, grave failings, and these have to be addressed. But what we need to avoid is a situation where the alternative is basically no rules at all. We go back to the law of the jungle, and that's what's happening with this Board of Peace. That's what Donald Trump openly is shooting for. That's what this Board of Peace is all about. So that I think, just because the set of rules that we have now are full of hypocrisy and full of problems, I don't think that we should be throwing it all out into the bin.
Okay, so you're saying the Board of Peace has no local standing within international law, or does it?
Well, the Board of Peace is, states have every right to get together and make a new international organization. But it certainly has no legitimacy in terms of human rights, in terms of the principles of international law. And I would even go further and say the Security Council resolution that endorses Trump's 20-point plan and endorses the establishment of the Board of Peace. This is really not only illegitimate in a moral sense, but there's a very strong argument to say that it goes beyond the realms allowed to the Security Council under international law. Because look, Palestinian self-determination, the inalienable right of the Palestinian people to their own natural resources, to their own country, and to decide on their own political fate. This doesn't feature at all in the Security Council resolution, in the board of this charter, so-called charter of the Board of Peace, of anything. So, this is really, the whole thing it's really an outrage, and it's a disgrace. And November 17th last year, the day that the Security Council resolution was adopted, really, I feel was a nail in the coffin of the international system that we have now. Really, the entire international system, international law as a whole, is really facing a reckoning right now. Because like you say, how can the rest of the world take this seriously? How can, if the UN Security Council, the only body in the UN that has any teeth, will openly, discard any respect for international law, any respect for the rights of Palestinians, we're in a really dark situation. Like I said, we're in the time of monsters. So the Board of Peace, even putting peace in the title, to me, is just, it's difficult for me to do, because it's so insulting to our intelligence that it really infuriates me.
I think a lot of people will agree with you. Indeed, it's received a lot of criticism, namely the fact that so-called American allies in the West, have declined, or at least have not yet said to join in. And it's curious that when I see names like Azerbaijan, Argentina, I'm thinking, okay, where, how,
these are the people.
Where's the relation?
These are the people, and it's not even countries. I think it's mainly that Donald Trump, on a personal basis, felt he could strong arm and could strong arm. This is what happened. In all fairness to the Americans, it seems like invite letters were sent out to the Europeans. I'm guessing they probably figured the Europeans would say no, and lo and behold, they did. The Canadians said yes before a lot of this sort of came to light, and a lot of the, it's all still very vague, but some of the details before they came to light, the Canadians gave it in principle yes. But after the Prime Minister's talk at Davos, now Trump is once again, feels like he wasn't complied with, he wasn't respected, was dissed by them. So, he's rescinded the invitation. But yeah, I mean, look, the whole thing is just, look, one thing that, yeah, it is absurd. It is ludicrous. It is an outrage. And the one thing that I always want to point out when we start talking about Donald Trump, sometimes I'm asked about Donald Trump's strategy and what's he after and all this, and really, this is giving the guy way too much credit. I mean, his objective is just one. It is personal enrichment. The enrichment of him and his cronies, his family, and his buddies, and and to satisfy his ego. All of this is sort of mixed into one. Really, to say that he has some kind of strategy beyond the immediate moment is ridiculous. I mean, he's basically a toddler. He wants candy and he starts screaming and throwing things at his mom until he gets it. And the problem is, the United States the situation in the United States now is that he has got what he wants. And so, he doesn't feel any need to change the way he does things. But look, this whole Board of Peace thing, I've been reading the commentary, of course, and people write serious commentary and they look at the charter and they dissect the language and all this kind of thing. But I just don't think there's that much point in doing this. I mean, indeed. This is a man who has stated explicitly that international law means nothing to him. And law in general means nothing to this guy. The only thing that he believes holds him back is his personal morality, which is, it's hard to figure out a lower bar than that. So, there's not much point in really, looking at this and dissecting it and trying to, give it more credit than it is, because it is serious. We have to take it serious because it's going to, it has the potential for doing huge amounts of harm. At the same time, though, I do kind of hope and actually kind of think that, there's a good chance that it will just slash and burn. It won't amount to that much. Look at the International Stabilization Force, so-called, this international force that it's supposed to be created. I mean, who knows? Maybe some countries will, in the end, be strong-armed into it. But so far, nobody's been raising their hand. At the beginning, when they were talking about this and talking about an international force for Gaza, there were some countries that indicated they might be interested. Indonesia, of course, one. Turkey was also sort of, in the mix, and there were a few others. But, it was very, very clear from the outset. And it became more and more clear as we went along that, this is just another one of Donald Trump's con jobs. I mean, this is not as advertised in any way, shape, or form. The idea behind the ISF, for sure, is that, they would get Arab nations, and that didn't work, so then they're going to get predominantly Muslim countries to do their dirty work for them. So basically, Hamas will not want to disarm. It will be Muslim fighting Muslim on the streets of Gaza as Donald Trump and Netanyahu, sip martinis in the new Trump casino of the Gaza Review. That's the idea here. And so, countries... these people aren't stupid. They're going to look at this and say, we're going to be left holding the bag. We're going to be, we're not going to have anything to do with this. So, there is a good chance that not much is going to happen, but, we have to see. We have to see what's going to happen. And I very much hope that, the rest of the world is going to find its back collectively and push back on this, because this is, this can't be. This can't be that we have this international body charged with a colonial administration of Gaza. Palestinian rights be damned. And, the only objective of this really is to enrich the coffers of Donald Trump, his family, and his buddies. I mean, this is outrageous. I mean, I just don't see how this can stand.
Thank you. Let's go back a little bit. Oh, I'm running out of time. Okay. It's interesting because we're on the subject of Donald Trump and international law. I'm going to sort of invite you to go back a little bit. Who holds America responsible when America breaks the law? We have a resurgence of Tony Blair, who went to war in Iraq, who broke laws, who killed people, who went to war based on a lie with George Bush. Neither Tony Blair nor George Bush have ever faced the law, although Tony Blair thought an apology would be enough to make up for over 500,000 innocent people being killed, Iraqis being killed. Now, here's the thing. If nobody's holding America responsible, if nobody's holding America accountable, again, what is the point? What is the point of the UN? What is the point of the Security Council? Indeed, what is the point of Internet, the ICC, the ICJ? If America, the same America, who actually should be in the court of law, answering to questions of murder, etc., is the same America that is sanctioning the likes of Francesca Albanese, that has held the life and stopped the career of, Karim Khan. I need you to sort of tell us, who is going to hold...
It's 5 o'clock. The headline news on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. My name is Israel Umar, and this is the news headlines. Making the headlines this hour, Loma warns residents against attacking waste enforcement officers. Sanwo-Olu urges private sector partnership to boost Lagos security. Senate fixes March 17 for passage of 48 trillion naira 2026 budget. And Petroleum Association Petrowan blames rising global crude prices for increase in petrol pump cost. Lagos Assembly denies budget allocation for Abuja houses and vehicles. Lagos lawmakers call for more public awareness on demolition exercise. And on the foreign scene, Trump nominates economist Kevin Walsh as new U.S. Federal Reserve chair. In entertainment, Fela Kuti to receive posthumous Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Anthony Joshua opens up on loss of close friends in car crash. And in sports, Real Madrid drawn against Mourinho's Benfica in Champions League playoff. And finally, Djokovic defeats Sinner to reach Australian Open final against Alcaraz. And that's all on the news making the headlines this hour. My name is Israel Umar.
Questions against Pangasinas, who are they fighting for?
I mean, this Pangasin is supposed to serve the interests of the country first.
This incident has showed us from the design stage we lack safety culture.
They're telling us that Nigeria's rental market is spiraling.
We don't put personal interest above national interest.
There are things that are in this country that some people travel to come and learn, like my culture.
The Independent National Electoral Commission has dismissed claims that Nigerians have lost confidence in the country's electoral system.
So Nigeria is exporting oil, and Nigeria is also importing petrol. How about that?
Well, what would have informed you rejecting an emergency case? That's what I'm saying. Gunshot wounds are emergency.
It's always more conversation on 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Above and beyond borders.
Beyond borders.
It's Borderline
with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf.
America responsible, because I think that's possibly where the world, at least again, I must say the global South, has come against the wall to say who, where, and we're asking. I'll give you a minute to answer that because I've got one more question and we're running out of time fast.
Yes, sure. No, look, I completely agree. And this is one of the problems. This is the main problem. Like I mentioned, the Security Council is the UN body that is supposed to hold perpetrators accountable. And yet by design, it allows, the powerful countries to get away with murder, quite literally. And this is the problem. And this is something that really has to change. If not within the framework of the UN, then, what I think has to happen is the global South has to, take the lead in creating something new. It's already happening. It's just, it's just in particular the Western media just chooses to ignore it. But like BRICS, the Belt and Road Initiative, which is, of course, led by China, some of the other Chinese, Shanghai Corporation, or the Shanghai Organization, which is also an international initiative led by China. It's already happening. There are already other poles of power that are starting to, emerge and be powerful. So how does this get us? How does this get us to holding the powerful states accountable? Well, that's a big question, and that's something which, unfortunately, I don't really have the answer to. But certainly, what is already happening, and what I think needs to happen is, different international structures have to be built, because for all this talk about Security Council reform, I remember very well when there was a lot of serious, there were initiatives to reform the Security Council, there were initiatives to do something with the veto, and there's still talk about this, but it's never going to happen. And what really, this is one of the key issues that really has to be addressed. But honestly, I think there's a very good chance also that this might happen no matter, even if the rest of the world just sort of sits around twiddling their thumbs, the UN might collapse in any case. I think there's a very good chance if, for example, something that I've been advocating for and many people have been advocating for, if the UN General Assembly were to suspend Israel, or basically de facto expel Israel, as what happened with apartheid South Africa in the 70s. I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump, kicks over the bin and says, well, we're not going to play with you guys anymore. We're leaving the UN and we are kicking you out of New York. And
but here's the thing, though. Let me interrupt you.
Sure.
Okay, so America leaves the UN. I mean, America owes the UN a lot of money unknown to many people. They have not been paying their dues, so to speak, the contributions that countries are meant to pay to upkeep the UN. So if America leaves the UN as a result of Israel being kicked out, would that be such a bad thing? I mean, it might mean that the UN should move to somewhere like Geneva or something, but would that be such a bad thing? Many people would say no.
I mean, moving the UN headquarters is kind of a minor issue, but but this is, it's one of these things. People involved in the UN and people involved in international law and international relations, they have this morbid fear. They have this morbid fear of the UN turning into another League of Nations and falling apart, and then we are headed towards the next big war. And we all look at the League of Nations and we say, look, one of the big problems is that the strongest country in the world, i.e. the United States, was not part of it, and that meant that the whole security infrastructure, just didn't work. But there's a point where we have to look at what we have now and say, the U.S. is acting as a negative force. Maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time that that we say goodbye to the U.S. and the UN, and the U.S. has its its cruddy little board of peace, and in the just including the countries that the mafia boss has managed to strong arm, and the rest of the world goes on its merry way with the UN. Whether this is whether in the immediate term or even the midterm this is going to contribute to world peace, I don't know, but it can't be. We can't continue allowing this hypocrisy and allowing these double standards just for the sake of making sure everybody is around the table. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I mean, with the Israelis, there's no way that one can argue that Israel is fulfilling the duties of a UN member state besides the genocide, besides the oppression. It has been bombed over the past 2.5 years, something like 9 countries in the region. It has openly attacked UN forces in Lebanon. It has, it been kicking out UNRWA from the West Bank and from Gaza. Just the other day, it bulldozed UNRWA headquarters in East Jerusalem. So, the contempt and in which it openly shows towards the UN. This does not befit a member state. Even above and beyond these open violations of international law that it continues on with. So, when you talk about this with some experts, some of them say, yeah, but the whole idea of the UN is that everybody is around the table, and then we discuss things, and it's much better than having shooting wars. I understand the fear of another big war, but when it comes,
well, actually, let me ask you: do you think that's inevitable? Because some are now saying that perhaps what we do need is another war to reset things, because we know what happened with, the World War II gave us a reset. And then here we are, all the institutions that were supposedly set up to protect us and to ensure the world is a better place have all now been, disrespected, so to speak, and they're falling apart at the seams, mainly thanks to the same people who actually put those institutions together. Is it inevitable that we're going to get to a World War III, or is it that we might need a World War III, as ugly as it seems, to get another reset?
Well, I think we need a reset. I'm not sure we actually need another world war to do that. I mean, obviously it's not ideal to have another world war. Millions and millions of people would probably be killed. So I think we want to avoid that. But, the question is, how far do we allow the powerful states to trample on the rights of everybody else, for the sake of maintaining what, some people like to think is some kind of peace? This is, this is the big question. And I don't think it's a question that we can answer, outside of specific situations. But what is very clear is that I think we are at a breaking point. We're at a point where we have to reset the international system, because it is so full of hypocrisy, so full of double standards, that it just doesn't function anymore. You can't take it seriously. So we need a reset. And hopefully that can be done without another major war. Hopefully it can be done, I don't know, the countries of the South stage a mass walkout from the UN. That's another way.
That's an option. Yeah. It's another option. Indeed. Let's talk about Davos. We're almost out of time. Davos last week, of course, we saw what is easily the first big threat to NATO. Here's that other institution that was created to protect certain people, supposedly was going to give us a safer world, and now the chief officer or CEO of NATO, so to speak, suddenly says, I don't want to play ball with you anymore. You people are small to me. I'm going to treat you like minions. I'm going to do what I want to do. Can NATO survive?
Can NATO survive as it is now? No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. Because, and it's, it goes far, it goes beyond NATO. I mean, all of these kind of security alliances, I mean, my country, Japan included, that the US has, all over the world, and all these kind of agreements, this sort of network of military bases and everything. And not just, military alliances, but also economic cooperation agreements, and all the, this gigantic network of stuff that the Americans have. This is all being called into question. The thing is, finally, the Europeans are coming around to realizing this. But this is not just about Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump is obviously a very serious negative force. But even assuming, the European inclination up till now, and I would say up till at least Davos, their inclination has been, look, we'll just sort of hunker down, we'll grit our teeth, we'll get through this. It's just a few years, and then we'll have a sane person in the White House, and it'll be fine. That was, after the first Trump administration, that's what they did. And then they had Biden, and they thought, okay, everything's back to normal. But look, 4 years later, here we are. This is the thing. Even supposing Donald Trump is out of the White House in however many years it's supposed to be, 3 years. And that is a big if. Because I am very skeptical that they are going to hold elections in 2028. I think the plan is not to hold elections. That's pretty clear to me since January 2025. But the point is, even supposing he gets kicked out, and even supposing a so-called reasonable Democrat comes in who is very establishment about the transatlantic alliance and all this kind of thing, and he goes back, America is back, as Biden said. What's going to happen 4 years down the line?
Absolutely.
America's full of this. America's full of these crazies, and that's the point. If I were a legal advisor to my government or any government, and they were coming to me and said, "Look, we want to sign this agreement with the Americans. What's your advice on this?" I would just say, absolutely not. What's the point? 4 years down the line, somebody will come along, just tear the agreement up. What's the point? Nobody, countries are realizing America is simply not a trustworthy partner anymore. And this is huge for the international system as a whole, because the United States has been central to this system, and it's huge for the Americans too, because they're gonna this attitude that Trump has been implemented in spades of my way or the highway. They're gonna they're gonna face a reckoning by this. They're gonna realize that sooner or later they're gonna be in a situation where they cannot. They cannot face up to these challenges alone, and nobody's going to be there to help them. That's what it's going to be. But what I'm saying is NATO for sure. The Europeans are finally starting to realize that this is the situation. I think the political elite in a lot of countries, my country included, there's a lot of talk that, look, what's going to happen? Our whole security, our whole post-war security and economic, everything has been based on our relations with the Americans. Now this is in the toilet. We've got to come up with something. We've got to figure something out.
Thank you.
This is where we are.
I'm going to, last question, I'm just sticking it in because they want me to get off air, but I do have to ask you, and you must come back because we've got so much more to discuss. We talk about this sort of disruption that we're seeing right now, which, some would like to claim it's by design. Like you said, it's just from a place of knee-jerk and what Donald Trump wants. Let's talk about the non-proliferation, the nuclear, and indeed Iran. What we are getting right now is you've got the likes of Pakistan who are now, you've got Pakistan who's got a nuclear weapon. Turkey, Saudi, they're going under the Pakistan nuclear warehouse and stuff. What is going to happen? What are we looking at? A minute, I'm telling them, I'm saying this because they want to cut me off.
All right, okay. Well, look, the non-proliferation regime is actually a very good example of how the powerful countries have used, the post-war international system to solidify their position. Because, the non-proliferation, the NPT, doesn't say anything about their nuclear arsenal, save to say that they should try to reduce it and they should negotiate to reduce it. It's the rest of the world that has these obligations, not to develop nuclear weaponry. So, this is one of those, this is just another example of international law being the tool of the powerful. Has it sort of worked up till now? I mean, clearly we haven't had a nuclear war up till now. So, one could argue that it's been, it's been effective in that way, but it's still, countries point to this and say, well, what's the deal here? And like you mentioned, countries that are not party to the NPT, they get away with it because there's no international law prohibiting them. Israel, obviously, is the biggie here. They've had a nuclear arsenal for decades, and they've, again, the Americans and the West have allowed it to happen. So I think this is just another example of the hypocrisy and the double standards that has to end, really.
Brilliant. Somebody said to me, if Iran had nuclear weapons, the region will be safe, apparently. This was a suggestion. And the same person said, if Pakistan had not insisted on having nuclear weapons, Pakistan and India would be at war. And indeed, if South Korea did not have nuclear weapons, all hell would have broken loose. Perhaps it's sad to think, is the future that everybody should have nuclear weapons, knowing that it's mad, mutual assured destruction?
Yeah, well, I think that's a pretty bleak picture, but certainly we're like I mentioned at the beginning, we're in the time of monsters. So really anything could happen, and it's very difficult to predict. But what is very clear, I think, is that, like I keep on saying, these double standards, they have to stop. Just the rest of the world is just not going to accept them anymore, and they shouldn't. They really shouldn't.
Thank you so much, Professor Takahashi. Thank you for being on Borderlines. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've got to come back, because I know there will be loads more questions from my listeners for you.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful evening.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Above and beyond borders.
Beyond borders.
It's Borderline
with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. Be part of the discussion. It's Borderline
On 99.3 Nigeria Info.
For information,
good conversation,
either sport,
entertainment,
or news. First, no more.
We'll fill you up on Nigeria Info.
99.3, let's talk.
The telenovelas of radio information. More news,
more conversations,
more information,
more sports,
and more talk.
Nigerians station for talk.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Join the conversation no matter where you are. Download our mobile app by searching Nigeria Info FM on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Also, get news updates in sports, entertainment, news, and current affairs right on the app. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
You hear it from us.
We tell you who,
when,
where,
and how it was said.
Lagos Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has commended past and present leaders in the state.
If you're planning to disturb the peace of Lagos State, please have a rethink, because police say they will not be your friend.
Kwankwaso urged the president to leave a legacy of free elections.
Only on 99.3.
Your station for talk.
Above and beyond borders.
Beyond borders.
It's Borderline
with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf.
Hello and welcome back to Borderline. Intense debate about governance, democratic governance, civic freedoms, and regional stability. On January the 15th, Ugandans went to the poll in a contest that extended the rule of President Yoweri Museveni, who has been in power, since 1986, which is over 40 years. He has now, apparently, becomes the new elected president. Museveni was declared the winner with a commanding share of the vote, but his main challenger, musician turned politician Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, popularly known as Bobby Wine, rejected the results. Following a crackdown on opposition supporters and a raid on his home, Bobby Wine is reported to be in hiding, fearing for his life. Observers have also raised concerns about internet shutdowns, restrictions on independent media, and heavily deployment of security forces, which has impeded the free flow of information and stifled dissent. Arrests and intimidations of political activists have further highlighted the fragile political space in Uganda. These developments resonate beyond Uganda, raising questions about incumbency, civil liberties, and the role of regional bodies like the East African Community and the African Union in responding to contested elections and protecting democratic forms. To help us unpack this, I have with me a very, very, very important African. Yes, indeed. He is going to be breaking down the political stakes, the democratic pressures, and what lies ahead for Uganda's governance and civic space. Today, I am delighted to welcome Professor Peter Kagwanji, who is the president and CEO of the African Policy Institute in Nairobi. He is joining us today from Nairobi. Prof, welcome to Borderlines.
Thank you very much, and greetings from Nairobi.
Indeed, it's a pleasure to have you. Let's break down the sort of historic context. Museveni, the man, the president, from the 80s to now, 40 years. Kind of wrap it up for us. Give us a synopsis of who we are dealing with. If you could do that in 2 minutes.
Yes, it's good to start by mentioning that the country that Museveni governs today has never known what you can call democracy or democratic election. From the 1960s, the time of Obote, the Obote himself overthrew illegally the Kabaka of that country in 1966. Plunging the country into low-intensity conflict. Then came Idi Amin, the dictator, who ruled the country with an iron fist until 1979, instigating, or rather, stalling what you can call insurgencies, multiple insurgencies in the country. And Museveni was one of the insurgents. Then came Obote II after the removal of Idi Amin, and the country plunged into its worst civil war. Now, the result was that Museveni won the fight in 1986 and came to power. There is always a confusion that Museveni came to power to bring democracy, which he didn't. He has said again and again that he is a revolutionary. He is a liberator who did not come to democratize Uganda, but to liberate Uganda. And for 40 years, of course, he has been liberating Uganda. And in 1996, he decided to allow measured opening of the democratic space to allow elections. But he is the one in charge of measuring how wide that space is going to be and how narrow it's going to be. And his party, which is not generically the party as you know it, has an iron grip on the country because it is a party, it is a movement, it is a bureaucracy, and it is one of Africa's most powerful and expansionist militaries. With its troops in south part of Africa. And therefore, Museveni is not your typical leader that you would say will be defeated by a musician like Bobby Wine. Museveni, I have argued before, is the one who holds the key to Uganda's democracy. It will be democratic if Museveni wants. It will remain autocratic if Museveni wants.
That's a very good place for me to come in. So, revolution versus democracy. What is the difference? Because to most of us, those who are coming in to give us a revolution in Africa are coming for the sake of the people. Are you then saying that Museveni is working primarily with the Ugandan people in mind? And if so, where does democracy come in?
Well, liberation movements of revolutions as we know them, have a tendency to devour their own mothers. They are born by the people, supported by the people, but eventually they impose themselves among the people in a very authoritarian way. And that is the case of Uganda. Museveni came in as a person who was greatly admired, as a person who admired Mwalimu Julius Nyerere's idea of a people-centered democracy and socialism. But of course, when he came to power, the dynamics in Uganda were different. Between 1986 and 1996, Museveni, giving the devil his due, was fighting multiple insurgencies from Aris Rakwena in the north of the country to other, LRA of Joseph Kony and so on, that took Uganda even to the International Criminal Court at The Hague. And Museveni has emerged triumphant. And I guess that is why he thought at some stage it was important to open the democratic state for competition. But the truth of the matter is that over the last 2 decades, he has been closing in a way that is beginning to appear more dynastic. His family has a strong grip over Uganda in multiple ways, from his wife being a cabinet minister in his government. His son is the head of the military. His daughter is the head of State House. And in a sense, his colleagues in the liberation are now holding multiple dockets. And that is the nature of liberation struggles. If you look at Cuba and other places where relatives begin to become very key actors in that order. And that is where everybody else becomes an insider, and democracy itself becomes an enemy to the liberation. So it is basically democracy versus liberation. And when, therefore, we use the standards of liberal democracy to judge whether the election in January was free and fair, I think we are talking about two things. One is a hot dog. The other one is a dog. One is a very dangerous canine. The other one is a quick snack. Uganda is a very dangerous canine. It's not.
Interesting. I like that analogy. So then again, we have to come back to the people. At which point does the rule of a dynasty, albeit won by a revolutionary, becomes a dictatorship? A dictatorship that's picking up opposition parties, that's stifling media freedom and, civil society. At which point does it become that?
Well, in the last quarter of a century, particularly after 1989, when the Berlin Wall collapsed and the Cold War ended, the international order was in favor of opening up space. And therefore, there was international pressure for the authoritarian systems to open up, even if it is pretending to do so. And therefore, when we saw a liberation movement, or what you'd call good coups taking place, the military people, as the case of Egypt will show you, were very quick to transform themselves into civilian rulers or subject themselves to electoral process. But in the last couple of years, particularly after 2014 onwards, we have seen the international system basically closing in. The values of human rights, the values of democracy, and the values of free market have actually gone to the back burner. And the big question is, who will prevent any dictator from deepening, the tyranny? And the answer is, if you look at the case of Uganda, there is none. At this level, it's more about transactional relations globally, which are undermining what the values of liberal democracy as were known before. And therefore, we in Africa have to begin to look at alternative ways of resistance and deepening of the people's freedom. I don't think the language here is now about democracy per se. It is about the liberty of the people, which is in virtually every national anthem of African countries. It is in every national song, and it is within our values as Africans. Freedom is at the heart of our societies. Therefore,
so why then is a Bobby Wine not free to talk to the people? If this is about the liberation, which I agree with you, we have, the fundamentals of African unity, of Pan-Africanism, is liberation and freedom for all. But yet you still have the gerontocrats like Museveni. You have one in Cameroon, etc. And then you have the young people, like young leaders, like Bobby Wine, who are, by and large, you've kind of said, well, he's a bit too naive to stand up. He doesn't have the power to stand up to a Museveni. Then which way Africa is my next question. How does Africa begin to progress beyond these men of 1970s Africa?
That is essentially the problem, because from the beginning, we saw the coming of democracy in Africa as a partnership between internal forces, however weak they might be, and international support because of the way the international liberal order was operating. But then now the liberal order is gone. And therefore, my argument is that we need to have Africans as a people, through perhaps the African Union and regional economic structures, beginning to redefine how to defend the space for people's liberty. Because if there's no people's participation in whatever is happening, then we cannot basically realize the good of that is expected to be delivered by the state, as it were. Now, what we find in Africa, using the case of Uganda, is where the younger generation are yearning for freedom and going to the streets, amplified by Kenya's Gen Z in Tanzania and elsewhere. But the older generation basically, taking a messianic position that we are liberating our countries. We are bringing you the good. You cannot see the goodness we are bringing you. And therefore, there is tension between the aspirations of the young and the conservative defense of the order by the older generation. So Africa stands at a very precarious position where we are experiencing the clash of generations. And this clash of generations is essentially about what our future, what we envision our future to be. And it is not a healthy position. And this is what we saw in Uganda, that the mass of the younger generations were pouring into the streets in support of Bobi Wine. But the old people have the title deeds. They have the gun. They have the shilling. They have the power. And this is the paradox in Africa, that the younger people have the hope, the future is theirs, but that future is beholden by the past.
And again, this is where we then have to talk about the citizens' franchise or disenfranchisement. You have somebody who is young, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, forgive my pronunciation. He's the army chief and the son of President Museveni. He used his social media to threaten Bobi Wine and his supporters. At one point, he claimed, and I quote, "We have killed 30 NUP terrorists." We talk about young people. You talk about revolution. Where is that partnership? Where is that respect? Because it's not only in Africa that the young are in a sort of generational conflict with the old. The same applies in other parts of the world. Yet in Africa, it's deadly. Why? That is the problem. Why?
I think it's because of the way we emerged from colonialism. And I think scholars, my colleague like Mahamud Mamdani from Uganda, who just releases a new book, Slow Poison, is arguing that the liberators of yesterday have become the poison of today. So what started off as liberation is beginning to unravel and become the tyranny upon the people. Now, the point here is that President Yoweri Museveni came to power with a lot of optimism from the side of the people and goodwill. And over time, this goodwill has become eroded. Gone are the times when people say, "Thanks God we can sleep," because during the Civil War they could not sleep. But people began to look now for other things other than the freedom to sleep and the safety in our streets. It's about the safety in our pockets. It's about the safety in our homes in terms of economic prosperity. And that is where things have stuck. When you come to a son, then it brings in another big question in African debate, which is the question of succession. And political succession in Africa is the proverbial night of the long knives. And in Uganda, because of the control by NRM, Uganda's night of the long knife is becoming even more dangerous, because this is a son who is heading the military and also heading one of the squads that are in charge of securing the regime from the public and also from the civilians and also from the military. So it's a special force that he heads, 10,000 strong, that will watch over the guards, that's the military, and watch over other people. And this is where they have now construed any dissent, not opposition, any dissent as criminal. And therefore, for General Muhonzi, any dissent, even if however small it might be, is criminalized. And that's why he has no qualms threatening. He has no regret enumerating the many that have fallen under his sword. And I think that's where we have reached now. I think the reason why we are speaking from Nigeria to Kenya, from Ethiopia to South Africa, is to tell fellow Africans that the future is bleak if we don't allow our people to speak. If we don't give our people freedom in the name of liberation, there is nowhere we are going. Yes, we have seen dictatorship. We've seen dictatorship from the time of colonialism. The British colonized us and imposed the worst authoritarianism in the name of civilizing us. The last generations have been imposing authoritarianism on us in the name of development, in the name of progress. And now we have seen young people who don't even know why they want to tyrannize over us. The Muhonzis, Kainerubaga of Uganda, and others. So we are speaking to say that Africa deserves freedom. Africa deserves to be heard by its leaders. And its leaders don't need to be leaders, they need to be servants. And the liberators that they call themselves need now to go back to the drawing board and see whether they are liberating Africa or they are colonizing Africa.
We're at that junction where we have to talk about foreign interference. Men, leaders, presidents, whatever you want to call them, revolutionaries like Museveni don't last this long without foreign backers. Who are the foreign backers behind Museveni? Which countries and why?
I think I would not identify any single country that is backing Museveni, but I would simply say that Uganda is located strategically, in a region which the West particularly would want to see, within its own corner. I'm talking about the Democratic Republic of Congo, I'm talking about the Central African Republic, and I'm talking about South Sudan. And these countries are fabulously rich in minerals that are needed in modern, economy. Particularly, they are driving the new energy, supplies. The electronic vehicles, EVSs, they're driving the new energy, green energy, and these are cobalts, of which Congo would have 70% control in the whole world, copper, and so on. And Uganda is a bridge to this country. Therefore, stability in Uganda at any cost is important for some of these countries. And of course, the leaders know that they are important. And therefore, they exploit that position of them being important to external actors and to basically perpetuate their rule. You could see that even the African Union and others did not raise a finger about what happened in Uganda.
And this is the problem, though. What is the point of that? Because, yes, you want a stable Uganda, but it appears that it's a stable Uganda for the benefit of external actors, not for the benefit of Ugandans, especially young and progressive and ambitious Ugandans.
We are coming from a place where we are talking about the security of the people. human security to a new, to back to what used to be state security and state stability. When you talk about the people, you are looking at all the factors put together that promote the well-being of the people. But when you talk about the state, you are talking about the narrow interest of the ruling elite. And this is where we are. And therefore, from the African Union to its regional economic communities like ECOWAS, SADC, and the East African Community, we are back to a situation where we are looking at the health of the leader, not the health of the nations. Where we are looking at the security of the leader, not the security of the people. And that is not a very healthy position for Africa. It is not healthy because the younger generation, when we are talking about the millennial, the Gen Z of the Alpha, the other coming generations, we are simply saying we have a very restive coming generation. And what I'm calling the crash of generation is not something to be taken for granted. It means that quietly, Africa is involved in a kind of a low intensity conflict between itself, its younger people, and the older people. The younger people, by far outnumbering the old. Here in Kenya, the people above 60 years are only 3% of the population. William Ruto and others are a minority, a very distant minority in this country. Therefore, it's time for Africa to listen to itself. And listening to itself means listening to its younger generation. Because that's where our future is. By 2050, we will be having 2.5 million people, a billion people. And these billion people will be in charge of the continent. Are we going to have people who have been nurtured in the culture of listening to the people, or people, or a generation that is brought up in anarchy and chaos? That does not respect the will of the people, but respect its own will. I think Africa needs to think for itself now. For decades, perhaps centuries, others have thought on our behalf, telling us what is good for us. We need now to define what is good for us. And what is good for us, we know from our culture, from Harambe, from Ubuntu, and other African philosophy, that we are who we are because of, we as individuals are who we are because we belong to communities. And therefore, we are not who we are because we are individuals. So the well-being of our communities is important. And the well-being of our countries is important. And you cannot pretend that you are liberating a people who are angry with you. That's not liberation. And we don't have to argue about the good or the bad or the ugly of liberal democracy. We just need to know that a people-centered governance is what Africa needs.
Let's talk about economy, because, of course, if we're going to talk people-centered, if we're going to talk young people, we must talk jobs, development, manufacturing skills, etc. If indeed Africa is to have new leaders, forward-thinking leaders, the young people have to have education, jobs, and development. What's the education of, or rather, the economy of Uganda like what has it been like under Museveni? Because when he was interviewed, I think he claimed to be doing extremely well on the economy. He also said something about, after all, even though he's old, he's the one who implemented the internet, etc., etc. So effectively he's saying, look, I don't forget the young people. I might be their granddad, but I'm doing things for my grandchildren, effectively. What do you say to that?
I think we need to give Museveni some credit, because he pulled the economy from the worst that a national economy can think. I was in Uganda in the late 1980s and part of the 1990s, and it was a horrible place to be, economically speaking. It's bananas, and nothing else, because you cannot afford many other things outside there. Supplies were coming from Kenya. Ugandans were flowing to any country, either were looking for jobs and livelihoods. Now, Uganda is a fairly stable country. it is also, progressing in quite a number of sectors. So even though we are very critical, we must give credit to Museveni that has brought Uganda to somewhere it has never been before. But he himself, in his writings and in his speeches, promised more than his delivery. That's where the problem is. He promised more. And we look to him for more than we possibly expected from other heads of state. He's a Makerere graduate. He's a graduate of Dar es Salaam, tutored by the best amongst us, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere and others. So and he has been in the trenches fighting for the freedom of the people. So we expected more from him in terms of economic development. So, like other countries, Uganda has entered this discourse that our GDP is doing so much. Yes, Africa is growing almost at an average, GDP of 5%, which is not very bad. We can do better to grow in 2 digits, like the Chinese or the Asian tigers. We are not. But the main problem is that we are growing economies that are benefiting 1%, whereas the rest are in poverty. And that is typical of Uganda. It is characteristic of Kenya, and it marks many, many economies on the continent. Now, Museveni's country, growing 5%, but when you look at the level of corruption in all these countries, particularly in Uganda, and it is so high, and not corruption is used as an ideology to depict Africa as a totally corrupt person, which has been a multi-generational argument. We are talking about embezzling of funds in a public and visible way, that even an illiterate from a local primary school or basic school can see that there is public theft. It starts in the village with the police officer and the chief, to the national level with the cabinet ministers and the government. And I don't need to get to the details of how corruption has sucked the best out of Uganda's veins. Now, that's what we are witnessing. And therefore, leaders like Museveni have a higher order and should be having a higher calling than some others because of how they understand Africa. When you read his book, The Mustard Seed, you begin to see a leader who seems to have a grasp of what kind of society is building. And Uganda should be a showpiece, a poster child of Africa, of what is good in Africa. Economically, there has been progress, but that progress has only benefited a few, particularly his family and the crew members of NRM. But the rest of Uganda may not say that it is doing extremely well. Many Ugandans are still going out to look for jobs. They are going out to look for opportunities because it is narrowing.
Thank you. So therefore,
economy.
Yeah, so it's a small P rather than a big P, so to speak. Let's talk about the current or the last elections and the judicial process, or at least, the judiciary in Uganda. Is it possible that the judiciary can be independent of Museveni when it comes to election tribunals, or is that near on impossible?
Well, you need just to understand what system operates in Uganda. I can assure you it's not what obtains in Kenya, and it's not what obtains in Nigeria.
Of course.
Remember, the systems that were inherited by the British were almost totally destroyed. First by Milton Obote, again by Idi Amin, and finally in a prolonged civil war. So Museveni came with his boys, the National Resistance Movement, and took over. And what has now been constructed is how the NRM imagines institutions. All these institutions are in many ways beholden to the National Resistance Movement. And therefore, that's why I said from the beginning, there must be a conscious process from Museveni's side and his National Resistance Movement to basically create independent institutions that are answerable to the people and that can be separated from the leadership. Why is that necessary? Because it is one thing to invest power in an individual, which is basically transient. And it is another to invest power in institutions which is more sustainable and permanent. And I think it's the permanence of the institution which is the question. It is impossible to talk about or to write about free and independent judiciary in Uganda and NRM in the same sentence. You can't. Because NRM is basically a total system. It is Africa's most powerful and controlled juggernaut, if you must look at it that way. That the military, the bureaucracy, the party, and the judiciary, the so-called organs of government as you know them, are all fused into one. They are fused into NRM, which controls every sector of society.
Indeed. Across East Africa, yes.
Yes, and that's because of the way NRM came to power. It might not necessarily be Museveni's, decision, but revolutions, whether you are talking about Cuban Revolution or any other revolution.
Licensed by the Lagos State Lottery and Gaming Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
Start your day and have a good time. Kivo Krima. Where you need to have the break time. Kivo Krima. If not tea, Papa Garita. Kivo Krima. Kivo Krima.
When you dine at that 5-star restaurant, ever tried eating with just one chopstick? When you go on a business trip, do you fly in a plane with one wing? Ever tried clapping with only one hand? Or playing a game of tennis alone? We know your answer is a no, because you know it takes two to tango. So, why not choose a partner that's equipped to complement you?
Get Value Alliance Asset Management Solutions today, and let's grow lasting wealth together. Visit www.valuealliance.com to get started. Value Alliance. We grow with you.
Introducing So Clean Pink Detergent, Nigeria's first pink detergent innovation, specially formulated to make your clothes look and smell amazing. It's with 2 times perfume, so every wash releases a burst of long-lasting fragrance. It's soft on clothes with color guard that leaves your colored clothes vibrant and bright. So Clean Pink delivers great cleaning while treating your fabrics to a touch of luxury. Feel the pink with So Clean, the #1 pink detergent.
Hey there, mums and dads. Did you know that some children are picky eaters and also do not get enough fruits and vegetables from their diet? Well Kid Baby and Infant Syrup is a food supplement from Vitabiotics that contains 14 vitamins and minerals, including vitamin C and zinc, as well as flaxseed oil, which supports brain development and all-round health. Well Kid Baby and Infant Tasty Syrup is for children 3 months to 5 years of age. Give your young ones a good start with Well Kid Baby and Infant from Vitabiotics UK. Available in pharmacies near you.
Lagos, get ready! Something new has arrived in Ikoyi. Introducing the brand new Moneyfield Head Office, now open at number 105 Awolowo Road, Ikoyi. A modern banking space designed just for you. Faster service, smarter banking, and a team committed to helping you grow.
At Moneyfield, we provide a full range of financial solutions to support individuals, SMEs, and growing businesses. Our services include savings and investment products, personal and business loans, virtual accounts, salary and SME loans, cards, USSD, dialing *5684# to transact, and many more.
Visit us today at number 105 Awolowo Road, Ikoyi, and experience banking built on trust, innovation, and excellence. Or visit any of our 6 branches in Idumota, Onikan, Trade Fair, Oshodi Shopping Complex, Yaba, and Ijora.
Moneyfield Microfinance Bank. You are in good hands. Introducing So Clean Pink Detergent, Nigeria's first pink detergent innovation, specially formulated to make your clothes look and smell amazing. It's with 2 times perfume, so every wash releases a burst of long-lasting fragrance. It's soft on clothes with color guard that leaves your colored clothes vibrant and bright. So Clean Pink delivers great cleaning while treating your fabrics to a touch of luxury. Feel the pink with So Clean, the #1 pink detergent.
Every meal I cook must taste just right. Rich, delicious, full of love.
We hear you. Your Maggie Star in double cubes. Double the flavor, double the convenience. The same trusted taste you love. Maggie Star Double Cubes. Made from fermented soya and other selected ingredients for that deep flavor and quality that only Maggie brings to your dishes.
Absolutely delicious.
Get Maggie Double Cubes today. Me and Maggie, so good together.
Lagos, get ready! Something new has arrived in Ikoyi. Introducing the brand new Moneyfield head office, now open at number 105 Awolowo Road, Ikoyi. A modern banking space designed just for you. Faster service, smarter banking, and a team committed to helping you grow.
At Moneyfield, we provide a full range of financial solutions to support individuals, SMEs, and growing businesses. Our services include savings and investment products, personal and business loans, virtual accounts, salary and SME loans, cards, USSD, dialing *5684# to transact, and many more.
Visit us today at number 105 Awolowo Road, Ikoyi, and experience banking built on trust, innovation, and excellence. Or visit any of our 6 branches in Idumota, Onikan, Trade